Today, we're going to build something incredible, actually. We're going to talk about how to build a better mind. We're going to dive into what's called constructive thinking. Basically, how to become the architect of your own thoughts to change not just what you do, but who you can become. So, let's just start with a big question, shall we? Think about that voice in your head. You know the one that critiques you, doubts you, or maybe sometimes, if you're lucky, cheers you on. Who's really in the driver's seat there? Just admitting that this conversation is even happening in your head is the first huge step toward making a real change. And this is the core idea of this entire explainer. It sounds so simple, but it's incredibly profound. Your thoughts are the blueprint for your behavior. Seriously, every single choice, every moment of hesitation, every bold move you make, it all starts right here in your mind. What you build up there, you end up living out in the real world. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll unpack what the mind's blueprint even is. Then, we're going to open up a toolkit for constructive thinking. We'll look at 3 key tools: positive self-talk, mental imagery, and something called challenging beliefs. And finally, we'll tie it all together to see how these things actually build real, lasting confidence. All right, let's get into it. Section 1, the mind's blueprint. Because, before we can start building anything, we have to understand the foundation we're working with. We need to see why one single thought pattern can be the difference between getting stuck and actually succeeding. So this idea that your thoughts create your reality, it's not some kind of magic. It's mechanics. Every single thing you do is kicked off by a thought, which actually creates a physical state in your brain. So if your mental blueprint is filled with doubt, you're literally priming your brain to hesitate and avoid risk. But if that blueprint is designed for success, for possibility, then your brain is wired to spot opportunities and your actions just naturally follow. So how do we actually start redesigning that blueprint on purpose? Well, that's where our thinking toolkit comes in. We're about to unpack 3 really powerful strategies that you can start using pretty much immediately to take back control. These are the big 3. First, we're going to learn how to manage that internal chat, turning that inner critic into more of a coach. Second, we'll learn to use our imagination like a flight simulator for success. And third, we're going to become mental detectives, hunting down and demolishing the old beliefs that hold us back. All right, let's grab our first tool from the kit, positive self-talk. And look, this is not about cheesy, empty affirmations. This is about taking conscious control of the most influential voice in your life. Yep, the one inside your own head, and turning it into your biggest asset, not your biggest liability. So what exactly is it? Well, it's not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about being intentional. It's the conscious choice to use words that build you up, that focus on solutions, and that confirm your ability to handle whatever's in front of you. And this is why it's so fundamental. I mean, think about it. That inner voice is your constant companion. It's with you 24/7. So when that voice becomes your ally, your coach, not your critic, your confidence suddenly has a foundation that can't be rocked by a bad day or a minor failure. It's self-generated. And what's really cool is how simple the process is. It's basically a 2-step move. First, you just have to develop the awareness to catch the negative thought in the act. Then, step 2, you actively reframe it. You don't just delete it, you replace it with something constructive, something that points you toward a solution. Okay, on to our next tool, and you'll see how these start to connect. Once you're speaking to yourself more constructively, it gets a whole lot easier to actually see yourself succeeding. The positive self-talk kind of quiets the noise, creating the perfect mental canvas for our second tool, mental imagery. Mental imagery is basically a dress rehearsal in your mind. Elite athletes, top surgeons, performers, they all swear by this. It isn't just daydreaming, it's guided practice, because on a neurological level, your brain kind of struggles to tell the difference between a vividly imagined event and a real one. You are literally building and strengthening the neural pathways for success before you even step on the field. And that's the real magic of this tool. It closes the gap between some far-off goal and something that feels possible, tangible. When you repeatedly visualize success, your brain starts to see the path, making it feel less scary, less risky. The goal just feels a whole lot more achievable. So how do you do it right? First, you gotta be specific. Don't just picture success. Picture yourself nailing the first line of that big presentation. Then you run the movie in your head all the way from walking in the room to the applause at the end. And this is crucial. Engage your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What does that feeling of confidence actually feel like in your body? The more vivid, the more powerful. And now for what might be the most powerful tool in the entire kit. So we've handled our in-the-moment thoughts. We visualize success. Now we go deeper. We go to the source code to dismantle the flawed beliefs that were creating those negative thoughts in the first place. This is like advanced mental architecture. A limiting assumption is basically a rule you've accepted about yourself, probably without even realizing it. I'm just not a creative person, or I'm bad with money. Belief challenging is the process of putting that rule on trial. You find it, you question where it came from, and then you intentionally replace it with something that's actually more empowering and, frankly, more true. And this just shows the transformation perfectly. Look at the shift here. I'm not experienced enough is a total dead end. But this is an opportunity to learn. That's a starting line. What if I fail paralyzes you. But asking, what if I succeed? Well, that creates energy and excitement. This isn't just positive thinking. It's like rewriting your own personal operating system. So we've looked at 3 powerful tools, but they don't really work in isolation. They're all part of a system. And that brings us to our final section, architecting confidence. So what happens when you combine positive self-talk, mental imagery, and belief challenging? What does that final structure actually look like? This is the payoff. These aren't just a list of nice-to-haves. They're the direct result of putting the system to work. Your new self-talk makes you more resilient. It's your internal coach when you stumble. The mental imagery boosts your confidence because you've already won in your mind a dozen times. And challenging those old beliefs? That gives you genuine control because you're no longer just reacting based on old faulty programming. You are consciously choosing how you want to respond to the world. So as we finish up, I want to leave you with a challenge. Think about it right now. What's that one thought, that one old rule about yourself that's been holding you back? Just name it. Because now you have the architectural plans and you have the tools to start taking it apart piece by piece and building something much stronger and much better in its place.